Hi guys, my name is Maggie. I'm a Danish baker. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make Parmesan-urte bread. Now this bread is not Danish at all, actually, but it's just a family favorite and it's a really popular bread that I sell at the farmers markets that I go to. So I just thought it'd be fun to show you guys how it's made. I'm going to be making a bit larger of a portion, but the recipe will be linked in the comments down below for just a single loaf, and it will be offered in both English and Danish. But let's jump right in. Roll up your sleeves, wash your hands, and let's get baking. Okay, so I just made some bread in this mixing bowl, so that's why it's a little bit dirty, but that's okay because it's almost the same ingredients, just with a few tweaks. So we're gonna start off with some water, and then we're gonna do some yeast, and then we'll do sugar, then some eggs, next we'll do some flour, next is salt, and then butter. Then we will do our seasonings, which is onion. You can do onion powder. However, this one that I'm using is actually minced onion. Garlic powder. Italian seasoning. And then we do our Parmesan. So those are all of our ingredients. Now I do want to say that if you live in a humid place, you will probably need to add more flour to this recipe. I live in a desert, so my flour is more dry, and any recipes that I've made in Denmark or in places where it's humid, I've had to increase my flour. So that's just a quick tip, but you'll see what consistency it's supposed to be, and you can tweak your recipe as needed with the amount of flour to water ratio. So we're gonna take this over to the mixer and we're gonna mix this. We'll start with 6 minutes on slow and then 6 minutes on medium, but that's not what we're gonna go off of to know when it's done. We're going to go off of the temperature and texture to know when it's done. Okay, so our dough is ready, and how we know is we grab a thermometer and we stick it into the dough, and it needs to read at least 24 degrees Celsius or about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is how we know that our dough is warm enough to keep the yeast active. That's also why you didn't see me activate the yeast beforehand and let it sit there and bubble and stuff. It's because if the dough is at the right temperature to keep the yeast active, we don't need to activate it. At least that's what I have found. So the next way you can tell is by doing what's called in Denmark a gluten string test, which is also known as like a gluten window, gluten pane. It comes by a couple different names, but all you do is you stretch the dough and you see if you can make it into kind of like a window. If you can see light through it pretty well and it stretches pretty evenly before it tears, then you know that your dough is ready. Your dough will not do that if it is not up to temperature. At least every time I have found consistency with the temperature and the gluten test. So those are two tests that you can do to find out if your dough is ready. Now, look at the consistency of this. I can touch it and it doesn't stick to my hands. I can also move it from the table, but look, it does stick a little bit to the table. And if I pull it away, it will pull away, but there will be some residue left. So if you need to add a little more water, you need to add a little more flour, do what you need to for wherever you're at. This is the consistency that we want the dough to be. And then we're going to portion it out. If you are only making one loaf of dough, you won't need to do this. I always use a scale for everything. I was trained in baking in the metric system using a scale, so that's how I bake. But you can eyeball it and you can use cup instead of grams if that's what you want to do as well. I have both options on my website. Now, for those of you who have baked before or bake regularly, you're going to notice that in this recipe and pretty much any of my bread recipes, most likely, that I don't double proof my dough. This is something that I've experimented with, and I haven't found a difference between double proofing and single proofing. In all the bakeries that I worked in, because we made such large quantities of dough, you would portion out 400 loaves of bread, and then by the time you got back to the beginning to shape the loaves, depending on how many people you have in the bakery, maybe it rested for 30 minutes, maybe it rested for 5. So I haven't noticed a difference when I've experimented with it, letting the dough single proof versus double proof. And when I say double proof, I mean letting it sit in the mixing bowl and let it proof for an hour, and then shaping it and then letting it proof again. So all of my dough recipes whether it's for pastry or for bread or rolls, whatever it is, as long as it has yeast in it, I just let it rest for 5 minutes so that the dough can relax. And then I shape it, and then it just proofs once and goes right into the oven. If you are wanting to double proof it, go ahead. It's okay. The yeast won't die. It will still have enough power in it to double proof your dough if that's what you prefer. So anyway, I'll show you how to shape these loaves, and then we will let the dough proof. Okay, so shaping your loaf of bread. I'm just going to show you how I was taught during my Danish apprenticeship. Everybody has a different way. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. You can take a rolling pin and roll it out and roll it that way if you want to. You can simply roll it up like this and have a more rustic bread. It is all up to you. It does not make a difference. I've tested it. So flatten your dough, pull in the edges. And you see how this part is wider than this part? We don't want that. So we want it to now be a rectangle, and then we're going to fold. We're going to roll it in upon itself and then kind of tuck it nice and tight. So at this point, I'm using my thumbs to push and roll, push and roll. And you can see it is a closed seam, but you see how there's this indentation where my thumbs have been. Now I'm going to roll it all the way over and close it up. So there's your seam. And it has like a spiral on each end. That's what we want. And you can see this side is a little bit thinner than the center. If that's the case, you can use your hand, your palm, to roll it and kind of push it at the same time, and it will disperse the dough more evenly. And then we just put it into our bread pan. I'll show you one more time. This way, your dough can be whatever shape it wants to be. It can be weirdly shaped because you're going to shape it into a log. It's going to be uniform no matter what by the end. And you can even go like this to kind of smush the ends together. But there's your dough. So I like to put cheese on my bread, and whenever you want an even coating on your bread of anything, you need to do it before it proofs. So put some water on it, maybe some egg wash. If you put egg, it's going to brown a lot darker than if you do water. So if you just brush it with some water, this has some water on it, and then you just roll it in. You could do seeds, you could do spices. I'm doing this shredded cheese, and then you just put it in your bread pan like that, and then you will let it proof until it starts to come over the edge of your bread pan. So now I'm just going to do this with the rest of them. And then once it's finished proofing, we will come back and I will show you the rest. So here are our loaves. So you can see they are coming over the sides of the bread pans. We're going to finish decorating them, and then we're going to put them in the preheated oven. And the oven is preheated to about 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So however you want to decorate these is totally up to you. I am going to do some Italian seasoning on top, and then I will do some Parmesan. I'm also going to score the bread. Scoring means just cutting a line through the bread. I'm doing a score that is meant to absorb the oven spring. And what I mean by that is I'm going to cover these loaves of bread like this with a lid of another bread pan. And what that does is that causes the humidity inside of the bread to be retained inside the bread pans. And what that does is it causes the bread to pop open. And if we don't score them, then it will pop open in different places. Some of them might break and crack along the side. Some of them, it might be the top. I don't know where it will be. But if I score them like this with a very sharp knife, now I'm controlling where the dough is going to break open because I have already broken the crust of the dough. Now you don't have to cover your bread with another bread pan. I am just doing this because I like the look of it. But you could simply take your loaves straight from being proofed and then stick them in the oven. And then you don't have to cut a line in them or anything like that. Anyways, we cover these all up, and then we put them in our preheated oven and we bake them for about 30 to 40 minutes. It depends on your oven. Check on them after about 20 minutes. After about 25 minutes or so, I'm going to take the top bread pans off so that the loaves can be open and they can form a nice golden crust. We'll come back when they're all done. Okay guys, our bread has finished baking and I have got to show this to you. So I baked in 2 different bread forms. I baked in a larger bread pan and in a smaller one. And I'm really glad I did because, well, let me show you the smaller one. It like hit the top. So it ended up turning into a hexagon, which if you want that, that's great. It's still baked perfectly through, but yeah, it ended up with a flat top. With the larger pan, it ended up with the nice, beautiful round top. So I would recommend using the larger bread pan so that you can get this really nice, beautiful top. Anyway, let's cut into this and see what it looks like inside. I'm just gonna cut this one in half so we can see the center. This baked for 30 minutes. It baked for 20 with the lid on and 10 minutes with the lid off. So it's really nice, fluffy bread, as you can see. It's super aromatic, gorgeous, delicious, and you can put this in the freezer and have it for months if that is what you want. Anyway, if you have any questions, concerns, you can comment below. You can also go to the recipe website and contact me through my email. You can send me pictures of whatever you bake, and that'll be it for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy baking!